Empire. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Last Man Standig podcast. Yes, I'm your host, Ben Standig, and I cover the Washington Commanders for The Athletic. It is Friday, early afternoon here in the DMV. I'm up in Ashburn. We've just gone through talking to the coaches. We talked to Dan Quinn, talked to special teams coach Larry Izzo, and of course, we're in the locker room as well as Washington is getting ready for Sunday's season opener against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. I will be down there for The Athletic, and I just wanted to share a couple of notes today as we head into that game. And also, I thought, look, everybody likes the preseason record pick, things like that. There's nothing worse for a reporter than to make these picks and then have it blow up in your face. Nonetheless, I'm here for it. I'm here for the challenge. I'm going to go through, not just give you a number, I'll go through quickly each game on the schedule and give you my record in that way. So we'll get to that moment here on the podcast. Of course, if you're listening, hopefully that means you are already a subscriber to the feed, but if not, I encourage you to do that. And of course, we have a minute to drop a rating and a review wherever on iTunes or wherever you do your thing. That helps the cause as well. In addition, of course, The Athletic. I believe we still have one of our specials going $1 a month for a year. I had a Jaden Daniels story up this week about how he has learned to handle pressure over his career and the fact that there's a lot in this situation, including the fact that Washington's been going for decades looking for the next starter, and especially the last, since like basically 2013 when the RG3, when the wheels started to come off of that, and how it's just been this journey ever since. So I talked to Joe Theismann. There's some voice of Doug Williams in there and others, so I encourage you to check that out. Also, the plan is on Saturday. I will have a story up on The Athletic. I've talked to a bunch of people over the course of the last several months, and while this is not necessarily applicable for Washington, it's the age-old debate. Does it make sense to take your rookie first-round pick and play them right away, or does it make more sense to wait? And I got people on this one, whether it's Andy Reid, Jim Harbaugh, other coaches, and of course, ask these questions of Marcus Mariota, who was one of those quarterbacks, Adam Peters, and so on. So that will be there. And I have one metric that I don't know if there's any metric that's the definitive answer, but I did go with one that ties in with the long-term range of the point here. You want to have a quarterback long-term, specifically how many got second contracts, and those that did, these first-round picks, what was their journey there? So check that out. I appreciate that as well. All right, a couple of notes here. Now I'm sitting here talking to you guys. They have not officially released the injury report that will say probably who's in or who's out, but I think we can make a couple of guesses right now. Marcus Mariota is probably not going to play in this game now, or I should say he probably is not going to be active in this game. He strained his chest, pec, what have you, on this week. I believe it happened on Wednesday, because on Wednesday's practice he was limited. Thursday he was out, didn't practice again today on Friday. So it looks like for the season opener that Jeff Driscoll will be the number 2. I thought this was, it's not something, this is different because it's coming with an injury, but you guys have heard me talk about, would Driscoll have an actual shot to be the number 2 guy? And I had wondered that because, it sort of depends what you're looking for. If I felt it was a game where Washington had a lead and you want to sort of nurse it through, then maybe Mariota, he's got the experience. Maybe that makes more sense. But if it's like, hey, you're down 10, you got to come back and you need a quarterback, I think Driscoll might be the better guy. He's more aggressive with his legs and more aggressive with his arm. So interesting that he will be that guy. Hopefully he's not on the field at all, because that means Jaden Daniels is good to go. But nonetheless, Jeff Driscoll is the likely guy. That Dan Quinn didn't say if they ruled out having a third quarterback. As a reminder, should you need a third quarterback, that player has to be up, basically. So if So with Jeff Driscoll, if say all three quarterbacks are available and Jeff Driscoll's on the 53, then he would have been, even if he's inactive, he would have been eligible. I'll be super honest as I'm sitting here thinking about this. I'm not 100% sure what that deal is, but I think if they activate or if they elevate Sam Hartman from the practice squad, I guess that would be putting him on the active roster should they do that. So I guess that's still the other option depending on what they're willing to do, if they feel compelled to do that. We'll see. But I don't think they feel they have to do that. The other one we're watching, Johnny Newton. Look, has basically not practiced much at all this entire summer, right? We know that he suffered, he's been dealing with a soft tissue issue on his feet, on top of the fact that these are the feet that he had these Jones fracture procedures on both on both feet. So it doesn't feel to me very optimistic that he would go or that they would feel compelled to rush him. But Dan Quinn said they will bring him to Tampa. No decision will be made. My guess ultimately will be he's ruled out, but we'll see what happens. Should that occur, they do have on the practice squad Carlos Watkins and Sheldon Day, two veteran linemen. I would guess Watkins, who played for Quinn in Dallas, would be elevated to give them that extra lineman. Look good. They do have Fedarian Mathis. Dorrance Armstrong can kick inside a bit, but that would be my guess if they want to have that fourth defensive tackle. And Joe Witt Jr. on Thursday said he plans on rotating the defensive tackles in particular because it's going to be very hot in Tampa, but simultaneously keeping Allen or Payne on the field at all times. But in order to do a rotation enough, it can't just be three guys, I would guess. So if it's not Newton, then I would assume Watkins or Day would be up there as well. As for Brandon Coleman, he continued to practice, and Quinn said today that he's done a great job last week when he got back on the field as well as this week. He was asked, though, is it possible that Coleman and Cornelius Lucas get reps on Sunday? And Quinn said, quote, yes, very realistic, and yeah, we're planning on that. But Brandon's really done a remarkable job coming back, and I would say he was close to being ready for the third preseason game. We just made the decision, hey, this is not the space and the time to go push it into this spot, knowing we had time to come. But he's absolutely ready to let it rip. The only question I would have is how comfortable would they feel for a rookie to have not played at all in the preseason to go out there? I've talked to veteran linemen about this, and generally the view was, hey, knowing what they went through when they made their first appearance as a rookie, that would be a tough spot to be in. But, obviously every case is different, so we'll see what they do. Cornelius Lucas is a very solid option if he goes in there. The only issue with him is more of a week over week. But for this given game, it seems reasonable to think that he could go out there if they don't want to roll with Coleman. Maybe they get Coleman, get his feet wet a little bit. I don't always love the idea of rotating linemen around, but maybe that's one way to get him going a little bit without him having to take the majority of the reps. Tampa Bay's strength is probably going to be up the middle with their two tackles, Cansey and, of course, Vita Vea. The edge rushers is a little more questionable for them, so perhaps they feel they can take a little more of a chance with getting Coleman in there, even though he's coming in essentially cold. Beyond that, we'll see. We talked to Larry Izzo today, again, the special teams coach, and one of the things that's, of course, so interesting there is, as we know, there's the kick return situation, and I think Izzo and the other coaches who watched the Thursday night game, there weren't a ton of returns. I think they're all still, a little uneasy about what is going to happen here and how it may not be nearly as impactful as people thought if they're just going to kick the ball out of the end zone. But nonetheless, in terms of all special teams, coverage, kicks, punts, everything, I asked Izzo, how do you know how to plan if you don't always know who is going to be available for you? And, that's part of the challenge. It's up to Dan Quinn to ultimately determine who's going to be active. But at the same time, the special teams coach has got to have some say. And you look at guys like Tyler Owens and Colson Yankoff, two undrafted free agents that made this team. They made it primarily off of special teams. Not saying that they don't have upside at their standard positions, but nonetheless, that's how they made it. Are they going to, though, therefore be active? Will Yankoff be the fourth tight end? Will Owens be one of the safeties available, or will they instead say no, we need guys who can we more comfortable with maybe a little bit more doing the tight end or safety and special teams. Not to mention are they going to have 7 receivers active? That would mean, of course, Byron Pringle and Jamison Crowder, who we think would probably be their kick returner and punt returner. But then you still have McLaurin, Diami, Zacchaeus, Luke McCaffrey, who am I forgetting? Oh, Noah Brown. So that's going to be interesting to me. You're really going to keep 7 receivers up? But that's what they have right now. So they may have no choice but to do that. I would assume that one of the offensive linemen will be inactive. Trent Scott would be my guess if it looks like Coleman can go, because Chris Paul at least showed some ability to play tackle, and obviously we know he can play. They're going to keep all keep all their safeties up. I don't know. Again, this is where the Tyler Owens things may come into play. If they think Owens is better on special teams than, say, Derek Forrest or Percy Butler, then maybe that's the way that you go, because you would have Reeves and Shin, and then either the Butler or Forrest plus Jeremy Reeves, etc. So interesting to see. And well, I guess it's really only 6 safeties because Hampton is more of a linebacker these days. Is he going to be active? You get my point. So we'll see how that shakes out, and we'll get more of a feel in a little bit. If the injury report comes out by the time I get done or before I get done, I will update you guys here with that as well. All right, let me get to the schedule here. And because, again, I'm just doing this to myself to annoy myself later when I officially say what I'm going to predict, and then it completely blows up at some point.
Hey everyone, Bram Weinstein here, play-by-play voice of the Commanders and founder of Empire Media, and we are so excited that Ben Standig has come along and joined us with Empire with his awesome podcast, Last Man Standig. I wanted to tell you about our 2 other primary shows, and selfishly, mine, the Bram Weinstein Show, which can be heard on ESPN 630 in DC from 11 to 12, but then becomes a podcast that goes up immediately at 12 o'clock, 5 days a week. Some of the best Commanders and DC sports coverage you're going to get. So if you love Ben's show, check out mine as well. And also, don't forget to check out the John Keim Report from Empire Media as well, the ESPN Insider. We are bringing you the best Commanders coverage all season long. Be sure to subscribe to all 3 of our Empire shows, Last Man Standing, the Bram Weinstein Show, and the John Keim Report.
So here's where I'm at. I went on with Kevin Sheehan today, and I said, hey, Kevin Sheehan, he asked me about the record, and I said, look, when I have done this over the course of months, I've been pretty consistent about saying 6-11, but that's based on, I'm looking at Washington only, the concerns with the line, with the secondary, young quarterback, whatever. But the schedule obviously matters, and we know that Washington has a last place schedule. Playing against the AFC North is a bit of a challenge, but nonetheless, the last place schedule gives you a little bit of advantage. So what does that look like if we're going to go week to week? So I decided, let's do that. Here's the week to week. Now, I pulled up also here while we're here the current lines for every game via DraftKings. So week 1 at Tampa Bay, Bucks are favored by 3. Obviously, this is the opener, and there's so much unknown. And that unknown isn't just here. It's also on the Tampa side. Their offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, is new for Tampa. He's been a Sean McVay guy in the past, worked at the University of Kentucky. Joe Witt Jr. said this week that, hey, we've gone down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what he's going to do, just like other teams are doing here with Kingsbury and Witt. At the end of the day, the Bucs are the experienced team. 3 consecutive NFC South titles. They bring back a lot of their main pieces on defense. I talked about this game specifically with Greg Allman with Fox Sports. It's a long-time Bucs reporter. I encourage you to go back and check that out if you want more specifics on this game. At the end of the day, I think the Bucs, it's at home, game opener. They're more experienced. So I went with the Bucs. I want to say I said to Sheehan 23-16. I'm not that worried about Jaden Daniels performing. I'm just looking at the totality of the situation. I think Mike Evans is going to be an absolute nightmare potentially for this secondary, because since outside corner is a big question mark. for this team. And Evans is not just, one of the better receivers. He's just a monster physically out there. And, how much you're going to play Mikey Sanders still on the outside if Mike Evans, who's got NBA's swingman size, is going up against a 5'9" and change corner. So Tampa Bay, I would have winning the opener. Week 2 at Washington, the Giants are incoming. Commanders -2.5. The Giants, there's more known about them than say with Washington because it's the same staff. Brian Dable there, Daniel Jones, a lot of the pieces on on both sides of the ball. But nonetheless, it is no Saquon Barkley anymore. Malik Neighbors is there. They add Brian Burns as a pass rusher. They should be. I think probably some people are discounting the Giants a bit too much, but nonetheless, I think the Commanders find a way to get this one, the home opener. I think the fans are going to be jacked. I think the players will be as well. So I'll go the Commanders win there. So now they're 1-1. Week 3, Monday night at Cincinnati. I have Joe Burrow as my MVP for this NFL season. The Jamar Chase is back, and while he has not been, he missed a bunch of time this offseason, he should be, clearly ready. He'll be playing this first week, but he should be, back to his normal self by week 3. I think the Bengals have a real shot to make it out of the AFC. I don't know if anybody's getting past Mahomes and the Chiefs, but I've got the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. So to that end, on a national TV stage, it's going to be fun seeing Burrow against Daniels, but give me the Bengals there, dropping Washington to 1-2. Week 4, then they go to Arizona. The Cardinals are a 2.5-point favorite. I think if the Commanders are going to maintain realistic hopes of having a winning record / being a wild card contender, I think they're going to have to win this game because of the games coming up after this. You lose this, you're 1-3. You win this, you're 2-2. The world feels a lot different with those two records. The Cardinals were one of those teams last year that I think, to me, if Washington can replicate, I think would be pretty impressive. And that is, started slow last year with no Kyler Murray, but they picked it up late in the year, not just because of Murray, but they were just a tough out across the board. If Washington can be that way by the end of the year, I think that will be, one of the signs of growth, along with Jaden Daniels, just his performance. I'm going to go with the home team here, though. I do think Kyler Murray is positioned to have a pretty good year. They've got Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in, and like I said, I'm just curious to see, can Arizona build off some of that momentum they had toward the end of last year. So I'll go with the Cardinals in week 4, dropping Washington to 1-3. Week 5 at home against the Browns. Washington is a 3-point underdog. Again, the Browns are a team that was, or a playoff team a year ago. They've got an excellent defense. They've got some playmakers offensively. What does Deshaun Watson look like is the huge story. If he looks anything close to the guy, putting aside the off-the-field matters, if he looks like the guy that was at Houston, the reason why Cleveland and other teams were desperately trying to acquire him, then the Browns should have a pretty good year. If he looks kind of a bit of a mess like he did at times last year, then it's a different deal. But I think Browns pull this one out, dropping Washington to 1-4. Week 6 at Baltimore. Look, unless Lamar Jackson's hurt or things are just going chaotic for the Ravens, I don't know how Washington wins this game. I shouldn't say I don't know how they win. This is the NFL. The ball bounces a certain way, etc. The Ravens are an 8.5-point favorite. Wouldn't stun me if they cover that. If that's the line that they cover that. I think I've got Washington going to 1-5. And now you're going, dude, are you serious? 1-5? Why haven't we seen this before? All right, well, hang on. The season's not over yet. Week 7, Carolina. The one team last year that had a worse record than Washington. Washington is favored by 3 at home. Carolina, they've got a new coach in Dave Canales, who, unlike Dan Quinn, has never done this before. Again, a bit of a mystery. He's a offensive quarterback kind of a coach. He helped, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, all these types of things. So I think Carolina should probably have a little bit more spunk. But that said, I think this is where Washington can get back in the win column as Jaden Daniels. I think he by now he's going to probably start looking more comfortable in the pocket and really starting to show playmaking. So I've got Washington winning here to go to 2-5. Week 8, this is a fun one. Bears at Commanders, which means Caleb Williams against Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels is ready for the spotlight. I've got the Commanders beating Montez Sweat, Caleb Williams, and the Bears. Look, the Bears have a really They're one of the more interesting teams this offseason because they've added a lot of pieces, starting with Sweat last year, and then, of course, Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze, and others, Keenan Allen. But give me the Commanders here to improve to 3-5. Week 9 at the Giants. Look, the Giants have had the Commanders' number over the last several years. That was with a different coach, Dan Quinn, as Dallas defensive coordinator. Much more success against the Giants. But in a general sense, you kind of think like this is one of those series, the division, you kind of split more than not. Maybe it's not more than not, but if you're competitive, I think you split. So I've got the Giants winning this one, dropping Washington to 3-6. Week 10, back home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it going to be Russell Wilson or Justin Fields by then? Either way, it's not the quarterback situation doesn't seem particularly secure over there. Pittsburgh's a solid team. We know that, of course, year in, year out. They typically are under Mike Tomlin. But, there's a little bit of change over there, maybe even a little bit of desperation for the first time in whatever. That said, I've got Washington pulling this one out to go to 4-6. Week 11 at Philadelphia on Thursday Night Football. So a short week here. The Sirianni and Jalen Hurts part of this team is going to be so fascinating this year. Are they on the same page? Is it a mess? Last year was such a terrible collapse by them. I still think that from a upside potential, they're one of the better teams in the division. I think I've got them winning the NFC East. But hey, we all had them going deeper into the playoffs last year, being more of a contender. And by the time they got to the playoffs last year, they had faded away. This is a week 11. I've got Philly winning as Washington falls to 4-7. Week 12 home against Dallas. Needless to say, Dan Quinn, Joe Witt against their old team. That applies also to Tyler Biadasz, Dorrance Armstrong, and others. Dallas is another big mystery team. At this moment, they have not signed Dak Prescott to an extension. They did get CeeDee Lamb done. They haven't gotten Micah Parsons done. Does any of this matter? If by this point in the season has that become a problem in the locker room, or hey, the Cowboys are back to where they were in the regular season last year, rolling up wins. So I'm going to assume to some degree yes. And even though this game is at Northwest Stadium, I'm going to go with Dallas to drop Washington to 4-8. Week 13, Tennessee's another mystery team. New head coach in Brian Callahan, who was quoted. I talked to him for my story about starting or sitting quarterbacks. He's got a definitive stance there. He's got Will Levis here, who I think is really one of the sneakier quarterbacks. Will Levis was viewed as a potential top 5 pick a year ago, slipped to the second round, but he's got all the physical tools you'd want. He also now has mayonnaise scented cologne. It's a good bit. I don't know if I want to wear it. But the answer would be no. Washington's a 1.5 point favorite at home. Give me Washington here. I think the Titans are much improved, and some people think they could be the sneaky division winner in the AFC South. But give me Washington over Tennessee to improve to 5-8, heading into the Week 14 bye. Week 15 at New Orleans, the Matt Paris Bowl here. The Commanders are getting 3 points. The Saints they may be the boringest team in the league. Like, even for my agent survey, they got one mention. One of their executives as like somebody that agents trust, but result-wise, there's no buzz about this team. I don't know really where they're headed. What are they doing? I kind of feel like head coach Dennis Allen is somebody who may not be there next year. I'm not saying the Saints don't have a chance to win that division, but I don't know. I think if Washington is in the right space, they could pull this off, and it will be a little bit of a return, a homecoming for Jaden Daniels. Back towards LSU territory. And that said, I've got the Saints finding a way to get this done at the Superdome. Week 16, Philadelphia here in Landover. Look, if Philly again, if they start imploding, then maybe this is a game where Washington pulls it out. But they are at this stage they're going to outclass Washington in a bunch of areas. Barring injury, I think Philly pulls that one off to 5-10. So now, the Vegas line is 6.5. Washington would have to win their last 2 games to get this done. Week 17, Atlanta. The Falcons are, I believe, the favorite to win the NFC south. And that is what I had in my predictions that I put up on online on X at Ben Standig. I don't know where Atlanta will be in terms of their own playoff pursuits, but I think this is where, again, can Washington show they are a tough out? I think the answer is yes at this point. So give me, I guess if you want to say an upset, give me Washington over Kirk Cousins and the Falcons to improve to 6-10, which leaves Week 18 at Dallas. Now, if the Cowboys are on their game, Week 18 may be irrelevant for them, similar to how it was at the end of 2022 when Sam Howell made his first NFL start and won that game against the Cowboys and Dan Quinn. Obviously, this is always a head-to-head rivalry, but if Dallas is able to rest guys, then that obviously makes life easier for Washington. But at the same point, there's the spoiler aspect, and I guarantee if Washington can play that role, they will do that to the max. Give me Washington, though they are getting 5.5. They're getting 2.5 against Atlanta, for what it's worth. 5.5, I like, who the hell knows? Give me Washington. That put Washington at 7-10. That's one better win than I've had them for most of this time. But again, I just think there's so many of these games. Let's see here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 4 games for Washington where the spread is higher than 3.5. Most of them are under that. There's only 1 3.5. The rest are inside of that, except for the 4 I said. It just goes to show how this thing could turn in any direction. Maybe the Panthers are hot and Washington ends up losing that game. Maybe the Cardinals start off incredibly slow and Washington pulls that off on the road. I don't know. 6 or 7. I think 7 is probably the ceiling. I'll get swayed by the fact that I do think I buy the positivity around these parts. And if that positivity leads to a little bit more aggressive play, a little more hustle to get for the bounce of a ball to go their way, maybe that means an extra win. So I'll side. That'll be my optimism. So I'll go Washington 7-10. And again, for me, the standard is to say this is a successful season, that Jaden Daniels looks the part, and this team plays with the type of fortitude, intensity, and so on that Dan Quinn and staff are looking for, and that will suggest that moving forward, when they are able to add more pieces, that the mentality has started to change, and that these younger players understand what it is going to take to win, to figure this out. So there I'm at 7-10, but I think that's the high. I think it's 6 or 7. Again, barring injuries. So that would be my high, but I'll say what the heck that they get there in this case. And especially it's more fun if they do it beating Dallas at the end. All right, so there we go. Some quick thoughts here on a Friday. Commanders on Sunday in Tampa. I will be there, of course, and you can hit me up on X at Ben Standig. I will have a post-game podcast sometime after the game on Sunday as well. But that is it for now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to all the podcasts. Again, go back and check out my one with Greg Allman, previewing the game, the details of the game specifically. But for now, that is going to be it from me, Ben Standig. I can't talk. Signing off. Until next time here on the Last Man Standing podcast. See ya.